Oh, it's
document.
now we're live. We are now live. So welcome, Sue. So lovely to have you on. Andrew and I, who's also my co-host for this Leadership Lounge, we started this doing the Leadership Lounge probably about 8 or 9 months ago. And the reason we started it was because we both do a lot of work in leadership. And what we have really realised over the many years and experience that we've had is so many leaders are put into a leadership role because they are great at what they do, great practitioners, great technicians, but no one has ever taught them how to be a leader, right? And there are so many different core competencies that you need in order to be a really great leader. And no one trains you on that. They just assume that because you're going into a leadership, well, you should know how to lead change. You should know how to manage underperformance. You should know how to provide feedback and drive strategy and all of those things that no one's ever shown them. It's a bit like I always say, it's a bit like putting a doctor in a position and going, right, we're not going to give you any training, but we just want you to be a doctor. Or a solicitor, So we call it, accidental leadership, where people are put into this position. So that's what we talk about, leadership. And we had an opportunity to co-author this book together, Leading from the Heart, right? And I just absolutely loved your contribution to that book because it's really, our philosophies around leadership are just so aligned. And I said, would you come and do a session with me? And you said, of course. So I said, what do you really want to talk about? And you said, I want to talk about the 5 drivers that keep leaders busy but not productive. And I just thought this is so relevant for so many people. So that's what I want to talk about today. But before we get into it, I just want to introduce you to the audience. You are a successful leadership coach. You specialise in developing successful leaders. You're in London, so it's 8 o'clock in the morning for you there, as it is 5 p.m. here in Australia. Yeah. And you work with senior leaders and their teams at all different levels, but mainly at that senior leadership executive level. You've written a number of books, but you also have just got a second book out. Is it out yet? Is it Screw Meditation?
Screw Meditation is definitely out.
It is out. Wonderful.
It's out. It's been out for a while now, but I've also just released the Audible because ironically, my reader, who it's for, like super busy people who don't have any time to do anything, don't
want
have
to
time
listen
to
to it
and read a book.
Yes. So welcome. And I'm so glad you did an Audible because I'm busy as well. And I read at least 20 books a year, and that's always a goal that I have. And each year I try and extend it. But many of those books are through Audible or through Spotify, so that I can actually listen to them when I'm in the car, listen to them on my morning walk. So I don't get the chance just to sit down and read a hard copy book. So how fantastic that you did that.
Yeah. There you go. Well, it was by popular demand. It was a dear friend of mine, Ashley, she is my absolute core person that this book is for.
Yes.
And then loads of other people emailed me and said, look, I don't read anymore. And actually, when you do the research, people's reading habits have massively changed.
They are.
Massively changed.
Yes. Yeah. And what I've found is they've changed in the sense that they like a multitude of things. So it could be an audio book, it could be a podcast, or it could be this. And we could be listening to multiple things at once. I know I am listening to multiple things at once.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting. And a bit sad for me, actually, because my whole point of this is that it gets people to take the time and make the time to sit down, because actually when you do that, and our brains are single tasking things, organs, when you do that, you do feel a real sense of peace and calm, and you do switch off and you do shut out, and it's very mindful, actually, reading.
I totally agree. But do you think that, and again, my way of looking at this is that we live in a faster paced society where knowledge is at our fingertips now. And I know for me, and I know for many leaders that I work with, we just want to absorb all of that. And therefore, we can do that in a faster way rather than sitting down, or maybe sitting down once a week or once every couple of days to read a book, but still getting that knowledge in a different way.
Oh yeah, there's all sorts of ways of learning and taking things in. And there is something for me around sitting down, being with one thing.
It's a cup of tea.
And it's taken me so many years to get to that, to be able to do that.
Yes.
And I hear you. There's also something quite comforting about somebody reading you a book.
Yes,
I don't know,
that's our
it's
childhood,
like,
isn't
like
it?
childhood.
Yes,
You
it
know,
is.
someone reading you a book. I'm listening to a novel at the moment in my car, and it's like, it's quite nice someone reading me a book.
Yes.
There's a comfort.
Yes, well, I think, stories have been told since the test of time, isn't it? They sat around in tribal communities, sharing stories and sharing, life journeys. So it makes sense to know. And you only have to look at young children when they get a book into them. It's like, yes, someone's reading a book to me, and they get so excited.
Yeah.
Well,
So
I
I
am looking forward. It's what? It's
yes, and there's lots of stuff in there.
Yeah, isn't there? I know. Anyway, we're diverting. Let's get into the 5 key drivers that keep leaders busy, not productive. Because I know from my space, I work with a lot of leaders that are busy being busy. And I call this in some situation, busy fools, that old saying. But they're not productive. They're not moving forwards to the goals that they're trying to achieve because there is so much going on up here. So tell us what the first driver is.
Yeah, so the first driver, well, there's no order, but these are the ones for me. The first one is be perfect. So that's when you really feel the need to get everything right.
Yes.
And if you don't, it's a real terror that you feel. This is one of mine.
Yes,
so I know this sense of having to get everything right.
And you were saying that this actually has been ingrained in us since our childhood. So tell us about how that applies to that have to be perfect.
Yeah. Well, the drivers are a response that we develop as early as in the first 18 months of life in our little family systems, to be loved, belong, and to be one of the tribe.
Yes, connected.
So you may, if you've been brought up in a family where you've got to get everything right and everything is perfect and pristine and super high level, super all of that, in order to be one of the tribe and survive, that's all we know when we're little is, you will develop this driver. So I'm only okay if, I'm only lovable if, I can only belong if I get everything right.
Yes, yes, yes. And I think, I know if I'm reflecting on many of the clients that I work with, it is that perfectionism, which does slow them down, doesn't it? Because it has to be right. I remember there's a guy that talks about, prolific over perfect, making sure that you're getting just information out there. We can refine, but don't let it pull you back and hold you back.
Yeah. And also not to make these drivers wrong. So these drivers have served you very well. So the guys I work with, we all have these drivers, right? We're all doing pretty well in life.
Yes. Yeah.
Let's be honest. So they can serve you well until they don't, until you overuse them, until you feel you have to get everything right.
Yes. Yes.
You're not good enough unless you do, and you can't be good enough and you won't feel good enough in yourself unless you get the thing perfect. And like you say, that can just go on and on and on and on. And it can also stop getting messy and iterating and creativity and all of those things that are essential in leadership, actually.
Yeah.
And also, if you have it, you will make sure your team feel the need to get everything right. So it can create a real anxiety and stress. And it does create a lack of creativity, and it can absolutely lead to burnout, as you might imagine.
Yes, absolutely. And I think one of the areas that many leaders that I know that I work with find it hard to let go. And that's where I'm trying to teach them skills around collaboration, around delegation, to make sure that they are not doing some of those and they're handing those off, as opposed to feeling like, for many leaders, they still become the doer as opposed to someone that's sort of looking up and into the future, because that's their safe place.
Yeah. And also, if you have the be perfect, you talk about delegation, it's really hard because
No.
no one does it as good as you.
I know.
You've got be perfect. No one does it as good. I might as well do it myself.
Yes, yes, yes.
And it's
I hear it
very
all the time. I
yeah.
hear it all the time, and leaders will say to me all the time, you know, and I say, but you know what? You didn't know how to do it when you first started either, right? You just learnt how to do it. Now you get an opportunity to now develop and coach someone else to know how to do that. Beautiful. I love it. What's number 2?
Be strong. So be strong now, knowing that you can have a real combination of all of these drivers. You could have 2, 3, 4 if you're unlucky.
Yes,
Yes. Yeah, so we'll start thinking about the combinations, but be strong is where you are the first one to jump in. I can do that. I'm capable. So actually on the surface, you look brilliant. And that's what you had to look brilliant when you were a little kid to survive and belong.
Yes.
But you will be the first to take everything on, and you will absolutely struggle to ask for help. You will not ask for help.
Yeah. Because you might appear incompetent, or because you might show your vulnerabilities or your weaknesses. So don't let anyone, God forbid, don't let anyone see those, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's something that I work with leaders all the time is, how do you show that vulnerability? What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? Where do you need to be spending your time in that?
Yeah. Because it's an absolute failure if you ask for help. It means you failed and you're not okay.
Yeah. And we know that people's biggest fear is fear of failure, right? Fear of not being good enough, not being the type of person that someone expected you to be or you expected you to be. It's that fear of failure.
Yeah.
I love it. So be strong. Okay. What's number 3?
Please others. So please others. In my book, Screw Meditation, I give a case study of a senior leader I've worked with called Dave, and he's got please others, and it's his it's his biggest one. And the problem with please others is that you don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. You don't want anyone to be in any difficulty or pain or struggle or challenge. So as a leader, it's an awful driver to have. Because it means you will be micromanaging, jumping in, doing everything for everyone. And you will not want to give constructive feedback. You will not want to say anything that's difficult for people to be with. So that combination as a leader is an absolute nightmare, and I see it a lot. And what it leads to is a real sense of distrust. People can't trust you because you won't say the hard truths.
Yes.
You're robbing your team of their development. And it's very disempowering because you're always jumping in and finishing things off for people. It's a killer, please others, in terms of leadership.
It is. And tell me about what they need to do in order to reduce that feeling of having to please others, because it's not just an instant no to everyone. What do they need to do in that space?
Yeah. Well, all of these drivers are extremely hard to shift, and it is absolutely possible. It's a core piece of the work I do in my strategic leader program. But with something like the please others, you've really got to get that you've got this driver and look at the impact. If you continue like this, what will happen to you and your team? It's not a recipe for success in terms of leadership. And then you've got to really do an internal shift. And this takes work. So this is what I do. This is what, what I'm for.
Yes.
Is that really shifting to pleasing yourself first?
Yeah.
Really putting yourself first, really pleasing yourself first. And also when you've got please others, the way I do it with clients is also think about the other person. You are robbing them of their development in pleasing them in the short term.
Yes. And I touch on this around leading with kindness. For many leaders, they can see that as a weakness, right? And when I'm talking about leading with kindness, I'm not talking about I'm going to just please you and be nice to you and you'll like me and all of that. It's about having some of those tough conversations. It's about, giving feedback that they might not want to hear but need to hear. It's about, talking to them about some of their areas for growth and actually being that confident that they need, as opposed to actually trying to please others, because it doesn't serve the team. You will not achieve your goals and objectives for the organization, and it's not being kind to the people that you lead either.
And that's the irony of it. And the two big things that I bring in with leaders who have this is learning, like you say, to have those difficult conversations. There's a real skill to that.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Yeah. And then also developing a coaching approach to really put the thinking onto the people, really teach your team to think.
Yes,
so rather than just jump in and go, well, what do you think might be the solution? What's your best thinking? What have you tried? What might you try? That is a really difficult shift.
Yes, it is.
But when my clients do it, it's a complete game changer, and they go, oh my God.
Yes, I know.
So they can do the strategy, the big thinking.
Yes.
The other thing about it, Kylie, as well, is that people go, oh, I didn't realize it was so easy. They just, because some people want to be pleased and want to be looked after and parented, basically. They just move on to someone else.
Yes. Yes.
It's like, oh my God, all this stuff I've been doing all these years, I didn't need to do.
I know. And this to me is very much the coaching leader of the future, right? The leader of the future is someone that is coaching and developing and growing others in order for them to be lateral thinkers, in order for them to be empowered, in order for them to be problem solvers, in order for them to feel like they're actually making a bigger contribution, a bigger impact within the team. And when that happens, not only do we see that within the people in the team, but we also see it within the leader. They're like, oh my God, look at my team. They're amazing, right? Because they can now go and do it. But also that allows them, as you say, for them to be spending time on the strategy, on the innovation, on the future, on thinking about how we track into plans, giving them the things that they're actually paid to do, the things that they should be doing. But they're constantly in the weeds because they're trying to please others instead of empowering others.
Yeah, it's a big one.
Yeah. Number 4.
Try hard. So try hard is, you'll recognize a try hard person because they always have so many plates spinning at the same time. They cannot bear a gap, a space. And often some of those things, or many of those things, will never get finished. This is because as a child, they were rewarded for looking busy. So, they may have been told, don't be lazy, don't just sit there, being rewarded for being busy. So they've got to look and be frantically busy all of the time. So again, you can imagine this is a huge one in terms of leadership. Oh, I can't hear you, Kylie.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes, yeah.
Oh, you can. I said, I feel like you're talking about me. I feel like I've got all these 4.
Welcome. Welcome. You can't escape childhood without. I've got a good 4 as well. I've got a good 4. Yeah, I've got a dose of try hard as well. And again, it's about when I've got people who try hard, it's about really simplifying and focusing down.
Yes, on the key priorities.
Absolutely. Yes. And really focusing down and learning that actually the more you do that, the more productive you will actually be.
Yes. For me, what I see in this situation, especially with clients, is that time to think and that preparation that's required, because I think what happens for many people, especially in executive roles, is there is so much being thrown at them. There is so many things that are needing to be done, and so many initiatives and so many projects and so many steercos they might need to be on, or business partners, just so many things that we get so lost in the detail that we actually are working on lots of things, as opposed to on the things that, as you talked about in that beginning, that actually prioritize and help us to achieve our goals, because we've got so many things happening. And I'll give you an example. I was working with a client, large clients and 900 staff under them. And for many, there was a lot of busy, overwhelmed, stressed, feeling like there was so much change, so many things happening to them. And when we drilled down in to find out how many projects and tasks and initiative were the teams working on, we found there was 110 tasks and initiatives that they were working on. Now, when we drilled even further, we found out that only 30 of those initiatives were going to help us to achieve our goals for the organisation. So here we are working on 80 things that they shouldn't have been working on, as opposed to targeting the 30 things that we should be working on, get that bit right, help us to achieve our goals and deliver our strategy. Okay, so that is exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah, and you'll find with all of this, it's top down. So if you have a CEO who's got try hard,
yes,
that is what will be going on in the system.
Yes.
If you've got a CEO who's got be perfect, that's what will be going on in the system.
Yes, yes, it's interesting, isn't it? But I think for them, they've got we talk about this from an emotional intelligence perspective. They actually have to have the self-awareness that they've got this challenge, right? That it's showing up in this way, and then be willing to get comfortable being uncomfortable, because all of these things require behavioral change, doesn't it? And that's going to make them feel uncomfortable.
Yeah. The good thing is, I mean, the pushback I typically get is that, yeah, but this is the way it is in the system.
Yeah.
And what the learning and development is that there's much more to be done here within yourself than people realize. Yeah. They just think this is the way it is. Whereas that's not
It doesn't
true.
have to be, does it?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. There's so much more we can change within ourselves than we realize.
I agree. So what was the first one again? What was the first?
Be perfect.
Be perfect.
We've got one more to go. We've saved the best till last.
I know. So be perfect, be strong, please others, try hard. What's number one?
Well, this is just like the sprinkles on the cake. So this is typically a secondary driver that you get alongside all the others. This is hurry up.
Hurry up, yes.
So everything needs to be done now. Everything needs to be done now. So you can imagine, so for someone like me, I've got be perfect, be strong with a really big dose of hurry up, right? So you can imagine what I've had to work through to get, to be standing here and sitting here and being sane.
Yes.
And hurry up is such an insidious one, because there'll always be more, won't there? So if you can imagine, so I've got be perfect, be strong and hurry up. So I would be, if I hadn't worked through these, I would be overworking on everything, not asking for any help, because I've got be strong and I can do it all.
Because you'll be a failure.
Yeah, and then it's all got to be done right now.
Yes, yesterday if possible. Yes, and you are so right, and I think I have all of them, but I seem to manage many of them. I'm sure I could do a lot better, but it is that constant for me, as I'm hearing you talk about this, it's this constant awareness of, Kylie, does it need to be done today, or could it happen next week? Because sometimes and I talk about this with leaders, is other people will put their priorities on top of you. So, I work with leaders all the time around, I've got some great tools around the Ivy Lee method and the Eisenhower matrix that allow you just to slow that mind down, because all of these things, when they happen, we've got chemicals flooding through our brain that doesn't allow us to think right. And therefore everything appears urgent and it needs to be done today as well. Yeah. So it's all of that it's this awareness of what's going on for me. What am I saying to myself? What story am I saying to myself? Am I the one that's saying it has to be done today, or are they, right?
Yeah, it's really interesting. And you mentioned the Eisenhower. I use and I talk about it in the book, actually, the Steve Covey time management matrix.
Yes,
similar,
same.
Which is similar. And it is all about shifting from all of that busy stuff that you don't need to be doing. Yes, there's some firefighting that only you can deal with.
Of course.
But even if you spend your time all up there, you will burn out. So it's really about shifting into that. I'm going like that because it's quadrant 2, leadership, quality leadership. It's really about, in order to be up there, which is what you're paid for in a senior role.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
You need to get rid of all this other stuff.
Yes.
And the drivers are the key. Because when I go through the matrix, they'll go, yeah, but I've got to do this. Yeah, but I have to do this. Yeah, but I need to. And that's the clue of it. When you're hearing a but, that's the clue there's a driver at play.
Yes, yes. I love it. I love it. What's the solution?
Well, the solution is
Or
to work
what's
with
some tips you could share with the
yes,
audience?
yes.
What would be
So
some tips?
so with all each of the drivers, there is an allow a statement to start practicing with. Only, you know, this is just a tiny thing. This is not going to crack it on its own, but it's a
Yeah.
start. Do you know
Yes.
what I mean? I
No, I
mean, this is
totally know
like
what you mean. This is not easy.
50,
Every time everyone would be doing it. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and they're in the book, so you can have a look. That they are a good starter. So for Be
Perfect.
Perfect, it's you're okay and it is good enough.
Yes.
That's the one to every time you feel that, connecting with that and check
Yes.
in with
Yes.
that. Be strong is you have feelings and wants, so to really tune in and recognize your feelings and wants and needs.
Yes. Yes.
Please others is to start pleasing yourself first. Like, what do I need and want? What do I want actually?
Yeah.
What would pleasing me first look like?
What do I need in order to be able to deliver, in order to be able to be what the business is asking me to be?
Yeah. And then try hard is just do it, or simplify. Just do the one thing.
Yes.
And then hurry up, which is my one I've been practicing with. You know, always a work in progress, is to take it steady.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's all of these, like, on a daily basis. So take it steady instead of rushing around to this one to the, you know, and like you say, does this really need to be done today? Because it'll always be an endless thing. And if you carry on with the hurry up, you will just be frazzled.
Yes. Yes. I think also with that one, what I know works is to plan, right? So I know when there's so much going on and I'm feeling like I have to hurry up, is when I go back to my natural state of let's prep, let's plan. What are the steps that need to happen? What are the things that we need to do? What is the process? What does it look like? I get above, I get really high. And then once I'm clear on that high, right, what does that look like from a success point of view? I can then drop down into the tasks.
Yeah. Yeah, and you know, and that's the holy grail. And for most of my clients, that's impossible when I start with them, because they're in that trap. So it's unpicking that in real time to be able to get there. Because, like, as you say, you mentioned it earlier about the brain chemicals.
Yes.
Because all these drivers lead you to cognitive impairment where your brain is not working.
Exactly.
It's not working fully.
Yes. 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 Yeah, it's interesting. I'm working on a large strategic document at the moment for a client, and I was sitting here and I was trying to force myself today to think about something, about what was the direction, what was the strategy, what were some of the initiatives that we could do. And my brain, it was not coming as flowing as I wanted as it normally does. And I actually sat out in the sun until I actually got what I was clear around what I was trying to do. And yet so often, and this is what you were talking about before, is people have hired leaders at this level, at senior leaders level, at executive level, because they're smart people. Yet when we become so busy, we don't actually allow our brain that opportunity to think at that deeper level. Nancy Klein, she wrote a book, a great, great book around time to think. It's called Time. Have you read it?
Yeah, I use it. I use
Oh,
time
do you?
to think.
It's beautiful, Time to Think. And she talks about the power of allowing your mind to just stop and let it run, so that you can actually come up with some really beautiful plans or strategies or initiatives or whatever it is. And I do it all the time because I know that's where I need to go in order to get the great results that we do. Okay. Yet people go, I don't have time to do that. I'm like, what do you mean you don't have time? You're going to make double time if you don't do it right the first time.
Yeah. Well, there was one big study in Australia, actually, that scientists showed that we only have 4 to 6 hours of cognitive function a day. When we're up to about 40, scientists say we have around 8 hours of cognitive function. 40 plus, it drops dramatically.
Oh dear.
We're all 40 plus.
This is not looking good for us, Sue.
Yeah, and all of my clients are 40 plus. Yeah, it drops to around 5 or 6 at a stretch.
Yes.
So when you push beyond that, you do go into cognitive impairment, which means your brain is flooded with stress hormones.
Yes.
which means you then go to fight or flight. So which
Mm.
means you're making fear-based decisions.
Decisions, yes, exactly. Um,
No.
I also, which is why it's so critically important for leaders to manage their energy, not their time. So for me, I will do really hard thinking work in the morning. I could write a strategy, I can write a presentation, I can do really deep thinking work. Whereas if you ask me to do any of that in the afternoon, it's just like, not a chance. I've been up since 4:50 in the morning. It's gone. I'm done. My words are done.
You've used your cognitive function up. You're
It's
done.
gone. So it's, I think that is also that opportunity to just slow that part down and go, let's just think about, when am I at my best?
Yeah. And that's the thing about the drivers will keep you on going, pushing past into that cognitive impairment, and so you are not making the best decisions as a leader.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. So be perfect, be strong, please others, try hard, and hurry up. Show us the book again and where people can get it from.
It is available on Amazon, hardback, paperback, and now Audible, and then Spotify in about a week. Spotify takes
Wow,
a
I'm
couple
going to
weeks.
love it.
And that's how I listen to books on
Oh,
Spotify.
yeah, so do I. So do I.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolute pleasure talking to you, Sue. Thank you so much for your time. If Andrew was here, he always asks our guests at the end of each session, he always says, we've got to the end. If there's one thing that you think that you would want to say about what we've just been talking about that you haven't yet said, what would it be?
It would be get a hold of the drivers.
Get a
Like,
hold of
seriously.
drivers, yeah. Yeah.
Get a hold of them, because if you don't, you will burn out.
Yeah.
And you won't have the best, not just leadership, but the best life you can have, because they just burn you out.
Yeah. And I think I'll leave on that note around Gallup just releasing their 2022 survey results, which is engagement scores from thousands of people from around the world, or thousands, hundreds of countries from around the world. And they said 40% of people are currently experiencing burnout, and 70% of the workforce is stressed or overwhelmed. Right. So I absolutely, and like for anyone that's listening that wants a copy of the Gallup survey, just DM us and we'll get that sent out to you. But it is real. And I think as leaders, just like as parents, they say put that oxygen mask on yourself first so that you can be that best leader for your team. And I think all of that starts with work with you first, right? We must lead ourselves first in order to be able to lead teams and lead into the future. So thank you so much, Sue, for your time today. I hope you have a wonderful day, and thanks again for coming